All right, well, let's pivot away from the stats for a second. Let's talk a little bit about spring. Obviously, we didn't see Lagway during the spring. They're trying to, keep that arm preserved, which I am totally good with. Was there anything that you saw that you really were excited about or liked? And again, I know we can't judge QB1 because he didn't play, but we got to see a lot of really new, exciting young guys, though.
Yeah, I think the Dallas Wilson stats from the orange and blue game really jump out, and wide receiver, particularly who's going to be this wide receiver 2 or 3. If we can have a true freshman coming in there and get those reps and really achieve at a high level, that would be massive for this offense. So that really jumped out in the spring game, record setting spring game numbers. So that's one. And then I think Ty Jackson is also spring game numbers, like 11 tackles, led the orange team as a true freshman linebacker. I think Napier said he had the best tape of any high schooler he's ever seen. Varner Dorr was out of practice. He saw him, run, step for step with J. Michael Sturdivant. So, having a true freshman stud at linebacker, even if he's not getting a ton of reps this year, that is a position that is really tough to get a dude at. And if you can get it locked down, especially for multiple years, 3 or 4 years, that can just anchor your defense and really bump the level for potential success high. So I think those are two of the guys that weren't on my radar. Dallas Wilson was some heading into the spring that have really jumped out that I'm keeping my eye on this fall.
I know, spring is everybody's hyped, right? We're winning a national championship when you watch spring practice every single year, so it's hard to tell. But I do feel like expectations are higher for this fall. I feel like the excitement is real. There is a lot of returning talent. What do you think a successful season for Billy Napier looks like?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I really like to keep my eye on Vegas and see what Vegas thinks of the Gators. And um, it's often, especially right now, not in line with fan expectations. Still
Sure.
at still right at 6.5 wins. Our national championship odds are up to 2.5%, which is very low. That's like pretty much they're higher than they've been under Napier, but we're at like McElwain levels. So if you are feeling optimistic on the Gators, now is a good time to buy low. I think for me, I'm sitting in the same place I was last year, where it's like, 7, 8 wins is a really successful year. Um, that isn't where I want us to be long term, but I do see the program making steps in the right directions. You know, bringing in a GM, I think that's huge, and starting to get some momentum with high school recruiting. I thought this has been the best offseason from our approach to the portal. So I do think there's finally some good signs. It's really going to be Billy's got to prove it on the field, and I think this year is crunch time for that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too. I do think that the schedule sets up a little nicer this year than last year, just based on home and away and who's losing people and whatnot. But I think for me personally, I think feeling in games is sometimes even more important than what the final record is. Like if you win 8 or 9 games, but you were not even in the other 3 or 4, it doesn't give you the same feeling as winning 8 or 9 games and being close in the other ones and just, running out of gas at the end, or they maybe had a couple more horses, in the stable kind of thing. So, I think, do you think that it could have just as much to do with that than the actual final record?
Absolutely. I mean, that always, matters a ton, for the fan perspective, and really, some people view Billy as being on the hot seat.
Very quickly, if you're watching the NBA or the NHL playoffs, check out BetUS TV for their great coverage of all things from a betting angle. I appreciate BetUS TV for their support and great coverage on social media.
He's definitely gone on and off during his career at Florida. He really turned it around and surprised me at the back half of last year. I didn't
Mhm.
see that coming at all. And so he's gotten more faith from me. I think he's got to kind of continue to build upon that and show it and really prove it to the fans. And um, if he can get that type of buy-in and put together a really strong, like 8-win season this year, maybe push 9, then we're gonna start seeing that buy-in go way up. Especially if he can get some, explosive offenses under Lagway.
Is there anything from studying analytics that you see UF may have an advantage on that maybe others are not talking about heading into the fall?
Hmm. That's a good question. I mean, I really like the trenches. I think we always underestimate the skill players get so much more
Mhm.
attention. The lagways, the receivers, the running backs, the DBs, like they tend to get more attention. But this year, I really like our getting our defensive line, like getting Tyreek Sapp back. That's huge. Bringing back virtually the whole offensive line. You know, replacing a right tackle that was actually really bad. And I think we have a potential to be better on both sides of the line. And I really think that's what makes the difference in the SEC. And it is a tougher part to predict from, you know, a Vegas perspective is how is this line going to step up from one year to another? I am feeling confident there. So if you're looking to buy low on the Gators, I think the both sides of the trenches are probably what would give me the most optimism.
Well, I can't let you go without asking you a special teams question. So, what do you expect from Florida special teams this year? I'm from the Urban Meyer era, right? Block a kick, win the game.
Yeah.
90% of the time, you block a punt or a kick, and you are winning that football game. Is there anything you see from UF's special teams analytics that you have that is of note or interesting, or something even maybe Florida should be working on?
No, and it's an area I think there's a big gap in college
Mhm.
football is really getting into these special teams analytics.
It's so
Friends
interesting
with
that they're
Zach
somewhat
Brust and
ignored now compared to maybe 15 years ago.
can you say it again?
I
I
said,
broke up.
it's interesting because it feels like special teams is almost ignored now compared to like 15 years ago when it really was a third of the game and the best teams in the country had the best special
Yeah,
teams units in the country.
yeah, and I think some of it is risk. You don't see as many just kick and punt returns in general. You see way more fair catches. You see way more touchbacks. So I
Mhm.
think teams are a little bit more wary on that side. But I do think there's a huge opportunity for you know teams to break that open and really we'll see what the next if college football ever adopts the kind of NFL style for the kickoff. If that trickles down, then how that breaks things open because I think that's made it really exciting at that level.
Yeah. Um, you know, Billy has said that they are so good analytically on special teams. I think that was the thing that killed me last summer is that was said at a lot of the speaking tours was that like we are just statistically Florida is fantastic on special teams, but we see so many mistakes and um are the stats still good because a penalty wipes out a play and so then it doesn't hurt you analytically technically? Is that where those stats are coming from?
It might be it might be a stats based thing that it's really just trying to minimize the risk. But it honestly just it might be practice reps as well. How much are these being paid attention in practice? How much are the kick returns being emphasized? How much are the punt returns being emphasized? Punt block, those types of things, or is it just really kind of an added thing that they're checking the box? And I don't have any sort of feel for that
Sure.
from this team.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bud, I appreciate you. Please tell everybody where they can follow you on social media, where they can check out your work. I think this is such an interesting topic, and I am sure that Gator fans are very interested as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm on Twitter at jbuddavis and do a podcast with my co-host Seth Varnador at Gators Game Day. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and we break down film and numbers. So, yeah, thanks again for having me.
All right. We appreciate you. We'll have you back during the season for sure.